Hi. So I feel like starting the entire course of Introduction to Economics with discussing the key principles of economics. And probably, even before we discuss those principles, we shall start with the definition of economics. So this definition is pretty old. It was designed by Lionel Robbins in 1935, but up to now, it's treated as the classical canonical definition of economics. So it says that economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Probably it does not make a lot of sense for you at this point, but let us discuss this. So basically this definition means that resources are scarce. You never have enough. Your income is finite, the amount of time you dispose it's finite, and that's why you have to choose. Because you do not have enough money in order to buy everything you would like to buy, you have to make a choice, whether you go to the bar or whether you save money and buy a new laptop. Because you do not have enough time in order to do all the activities you'd like to do, you have to choose whether you spend your time on studying or you do some more pleasant activity. And basically, the concept of efficiency in economics requires you to make the optimal choice. To make the choice which will be the most satisfactory one for you. We will discuss this a lot because I like discussing things like this. That's why you will not avoid it if you decide to continue watching this channel. But yeah, this is the principal idea in economics. Because resources are scarce, we have to make a choice. And if you want to be rational, we have to make a good choice. Technically speaking, deciding not to study at all, spend all your money, on something which is pleasant but bad for your health. Okay, no advertisement here, but you've got what I mean. It's technically possible, yeah? It's one of the options for you. However, you would probably not call this choice rational. Although it's another very questionable issue in economics. Okay, right now I feel like I'm discussing this too much. We will get back to this issue once you get those basic principles. So, economic good is another key concept in economics, and it's very easy to define. So, economic good is something associated with utility. And utility is just a fancy way economists call feeling of happiness or satisfaction. And economic good is also associated with some opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is everything you have to give up in order to get something. So it's relatively easy in case of food, yeah? You do not get it for free, usually. Like you go to the supermarket, you get some food, you pay some money, it's clear. You buy food because it makes you happier or at least more satisfied, and it's not for free because you have to pay for it. However, in situations when food is provided for free for you, still someone else has to pay for it. Like your school, local community, or the government, or maybe charity organizations. So, you see, that's why it's still an example of economic good. Even if you get it for free, someone has paid for it anyways. Consider another example, which is less obvious: clean water and probably clean air. You might be lucky enough to live in the region when it's safe to drink water from, natural resources, and air is clean enough, so you do not have to pay anything for those luxuries. However, it still means that someone else has to pay for it. Probably not explicitly, not like, paying money in order to let people drink clean water and breathe with clean air. But in this case, probably producers, like firms which produce industrial goods, which is frequently associated with natural environment pollution, had either to limit their production and lose some profit, or to invest in order to neutralize the effect of their production on natural environment. In both cases, even though it might be free for you, it was an expense for some other party. The same applies to education and even children. I know it sounds a bit weird, but we can also classify children as economic good. So they bring you some happiness or meaning of life. I have no idea. But I believe there is some reason for which people have children. But at the same time, they are so expensive. So if you have children, you cannot buy as much, I don't know, cars, TV sets, laptops, whatever you prefer, because you have to spend your money on children. So that's why children are another perfect example of economic good. So no free lunch principle is something we discussed a second ago, but it's some official name for this principle in economics. I just wanted to share it. So it says that nothing is for free. If you get something good for free, like free lunch, I don't know, maybe from charity organization or something, it still means that someone else has to pay for it. In some countries, education is provided for free, at least in primary schools and so on. So even though families of students do not have to pay for their education, it means that government has to pay for education. And government collects taxes, which means that the entire society has to pay for education. So yeah, nothing good comes for free. When it comes to economic bets, like things you hate, things which are associated with disutility, the opposite of utility, happiness and satisfaction, of course they can come for free. So usually you pay in order not to experience economic bets. But this is another issue. Okay, so as we discussed before, because there is scarcity, you always have to make a choice. And opportunity cost is everything you must sacrifice for the economic good. Again, if you forget about 8 hours daily you have to spend on sleep, you are left with 112 hours per week. So this is the time you dispose. It's up to you what to do with your free time. You can spend it on studying, or you can spend it on some social activities. So if you spend a lot of time on social activities and not that much time on studies, probably you're a very social student. If the opposite is true, probably you want to go to Harvard and you sacrifice communication with your fellows in order to study more and be more successful in the future. But actually, most probably you will end up here. So usually this is the choice of the representative student. Actually, it can be explained by the properties of your utility function, the function which describes the relationship between your happiness and consumption. But again, this is something we are going to discuss much later. But still, I believe that you find this very relatable, yeah? I'm not discriminating, of course, but usually I have a feeling that most of students are somewhere here. So they spend some time on studies and some time on social activities. So there is something called production possibilities frontier. So this line represents all the possible choices. So I just picked 3 points, to, explain what's going on, but probably you can also consume here, 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 here. So you can choose any bundle, any combination of time spent on studies and time spent on social activities, which is located on this line. So very similar, we analyzed production possibilities frontier. So it stands for all the possible combinations of goods and services the economy can produce. So we can think about why butter and bread? It was to be butter and guns. Okay, whatever. So assume that we have only two goods, butter and bread. This is a very stupid example and I feel a bit ashamed, but you can also think about production of consumption goods, like goods for people, cars, clothes, and so on, and production of industrial goods or military goods, So any combination on this concave line is technically possible to produce. But what combination the society will actually produce depends on social choice. And social choice is another very extensive theory in economics we're going to discuss, but not today, no way. So basically social choice is the choice of the society. Whether people prefer to consume more consumption goods and less industrial goods, or the opposite. So North Korea is probably a very extreme example, yeah? So this is the country which produces a lot of industrial and military goods and not that much of consumption goods. So you see, it's all determined by the social choice, people's preferences, or maybe dictators' preferences. But again, I feel right now that it's too complicated to discuss. So just keep in mind that any point, any bundle on this production possibilities frontier is possible to produce, but what bundle will actually be produced depends on many factors. And one of these factors is preferences of people living in the society, and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, income constraint stands for all the possible combination of goods the consumer can consume given prices and income. So this is something very similar to what we discussed here when we analyzed time constraint. So actually it's another example of constraint. It's pretty similar. So you receive a salary which is exogenous for you. You cannot affect it, so you treat it as given. And then you just decide on how you prefer to spend your money. So if we assume that there are only two goods, potatoes and beef, of course there are many of them, but we assume this just for the sake of simplicity in order to be able to draw this nice linear graph. And this line represents all the combinations of potatoes and beef you are able to consume. So if you decide to spend all your money on potatoes, then you have to divide your income by the price per unit of potatoes, and you will be able to consume this quantity or this amount, whatever. Analogously, you can divide your salary by the price of the unit of beef, and again, this is the amount of beef you will be able to consume. Presumably, beef is more expensive than potatoes. That's why you will be able to consume a relatively smaller amount. Again, although each bundle on this line you can consume, your actual choice will depend on your preferences. Maybe you are vegetarian. That's why you will consume only potatoes. Maybe you have allergy to gluten. That's why you will consume only beef. Or maybe, like any ordinary person, you will consume somewhere here. So you prefer a nice combination of potatoes and beef. We will get back to preferences when we discuss microeconomics issues. I mean, the part of this course related to individual choice. But again, what you have to keep in mind is that this is the range of possibilities, and your actual choice depends on your preferences. If you assume that you are a rational person, for instance, that you will not spend all your money on beef if you're a vegetarian, or you will not spend all your money on potatoes if you are allergic to gluten, then you should consume what your preferences tell you to consume. So this is called rationality, and this is called efficiency. How to spend your money in the way which makes you the happiest in comparison to all the alternatives. Okay, so again, we will get back to this. This is just an introduction. So just to provide a very brief summary, economics nowadays, it's pretty about everything. So anytime we discuss choice, like decision you have to make because resources are scarce and you have to choose, when you face a trade-off, again, you can always conceptualize it in terms of economics. So economics discusses crime and punishment because, again, criminals face a trade-off, yeah? So you can commit a crime and then there is some expected punishment, or you might not commit a crime and there is no punishment and no reward at the same time. So basically, the task of government is to make sure that expected punishment is greater than expected reward associated with crime. So again, Becker was an economist and he discussed this problem in terms of economics. Dating. There is something called economics of sex, like which analyzes how people choose partners depending on their preferences, and other things. Again, it can be conceptualized in terms of economic models. Quality and quantity of children. Again, how many children you decide to have, because as we discussed, there is a choice, there is a trade-off, and how much money you decide to spend on their quality, like education and healthcare, and even altruism. So, your sincere feeling, your sincere desire of making something good for other people can also be described in terms of economic model. Also, in terms of economic model, you can describe, for instance, why government decides to spend money on military forces instead of financing education, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to illustrate that any decision-making problem can be discussed in terms of economics, which of course imposes some restrictions on the way you think about those problems. Each of those works, from different fields of economics, assumes that people are rational. It assumes that people always choose what is the best for them, which is a very questionable assumption. But again, because this is my idea fix, we will get back to this, just not in this video. Okay, so that was it when it comes to the very first part of our gentle introduction to economics. I hope you enjoyed this video. And in the next video, we are going to proceed to the concept of efficiency, positive and normative analysis, and other issues related to economics. Thank you for watching.